Welcome to our mini behind the scenes podcast series dedicated to our new project, The Field, an audio mystery set in the town of Llanantwn. In this series, we are joined by Hefin Robinson, a writer who we collaborated with on the project, and discuss the story behind making the series. We hope you enjoy.
I thought this was almost impossible to answer. So we don't want to give too much away with regards to the field. But in 3 words, how would you describe the field experience?
Oh, no. You haven't dropped that one. Oh, gosh. Okay.
Would it be helpful in 4 words?
And I guess you could say experience in terms of maybe from a audience perspective or from your experience in terms of the project.
Well, okay. I was gonna do the classic thing of offloading it and saying, should we take a word each? As there's 3 of us.
I think that sounds great.
I thought of maybe connections.
Mm-hmm.
That would be mine.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Do we need to describe?
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you talk about connections, because it's I think it's what kind of connections.
So I think the structure that we are trying to explore really is the aha moments in games, right? So in a game or a puzzle, maybe a puzzle is a better description, where you're kind of trying to figure something out and then you kind of go this aha moment and then you kind of like over there. And I think that happens quite often in stories as well, where you've kind of like, if there's a criminal or, there's a kind of clue and you go, oh, I think I know who the killer is. And then, half an hour later they reveal, and unfortunately you're very wrong. But you for one moment, you had this whole line of thinking. And I think because we were building a project that effectively is 5 stories, if you like, that have been chopped up to a degree where they definitely they're definitely controlled scenes, but the idea is that you're effectively rolling a dice and then just reforming them in any order. I think the connections for us was whether we could build something like that, or like that feeling I was just talking about, and people would then do that legwork between these kind of like episodes. So because you're not controlling where the order is, I might even put a diagram up on the screen on this because it's so complicated, but like people would start kind of thinking a little bit more about the audio. And it'll be interesting to see as an experiment on this pilot, whether or not that would be a case, will be the case, or whether people would just sit back and just listen to it. I think that's the kind of, not conflict, like the kind of interest I have as to if it's sat back or lean forward, how people take it.
I think that's what excites me about it, is the fact that what you put into it is what you get out of it. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. I think as well, isn't it? There's that bit of like when we were talking earlier with the discussing when we first met you indirectly on a street game. And a street game is this thing where at the end of the game, it's almost when the game starts in story terms, because everyone goes back to the pub and starts talking. And it's known as like froth, the froth of retelling a story and recapturing a story. So I guess in some ways it's almost seeing whether that exists within this. So that person's making their own story or making their own assumptions between these scenes. And because while we've got these 5 threads, we're not giving them every scene that we've written. So they're not receiving the whole story of each thread. There's probably only one technically that they see all the way throughout, which is the main character, really, in a sense. If you can hear the tippy taps, that's our dog Bobby just going for a little wander. So maybe it's that as well, that retelling within their own self because of the connections they're making.
Okay, so you've one word connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you got a word yet?
Not yet.
No, I mean, I haven't really got a word. I have See, I have the word surprise is in my head, but I don't mean it as in boo, surprise, or like happy birthday, it's not that kind of surprise. It's the possibility of being surprised or seeing something from a perspective that is not what you were expecting originally, or seeing the same thing from a different perspective. I think that's something we talked about a lot with this project. Because of the nature of the strands, we've got some events that we see from different angles, don't we? And we see how different characters react to those moments. And I think it's linked to what you were saying about connection and how the way you link things might surprise you or might, take you to somewhere you weren't expecting.
Maybe the third word then is something like feel. So maybe coming away with a sense of a feeling, as well as maybe making those connections in terms of like the literal story. So maybe when we were talking really early on about how this piece would kind of work, part of it was how would somebody feel when listening to that particular scene. And that could be, yes, grief. That could be surprise. That could be loneliness, or that could be shock. Mm-hmm. So I think, maybe feel being one of those words.
Yeah, I should point out there are some nice feelings.
Oh yeah, have I just mentioned all negative things? Oh God, happiness, I should say. Yeah, joy.
Yeah. And again, it's that juxtaposition between feelings as well. I think because of the randomized nature, you can end up with two really contrasting kind of atmospheres and feelings back to back. And again, I guess that comes down to a surprise, and that comes down to connection. That to me is what is really exciting about the potential of this is those moments where you really fall into a piece and you really get into it, and then you're taken out of it into something really different, isn't it? And then kind of jolt and never fully being able to sit in one world, because you're always, even though it's set in one world, but that sense of going on a journey.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Crafted Reality with me, Alison John, and my partner in crime, Julian Sykes. Remember to like and subscribe and share with anyone you think might be interested. And if you really like the podcast, remember we have a brand new Patreon page. The link is in the show notes. We appreciate all of your support. Thanks for joining us again, and we will catch you next time.